Derek Wright's teeth glint in the eerie bioluminescent light as he emerges from his crashed spacecraft, unknowingly terrifying the alien watching from the shadows. The human explorer stands amidst the wreckage of his small ship, now embedded in the dense jungle of Zarth. Tendrils of smoke rise from the twisted metal, mixing with the humid air thick with unfamiliar scents. Derek surveys his surroundings, his eyes adjusting to the dim light cast by the glowing flora. Towering trees with phosphorescent bark stretch towards a sky hidden by a canopy of shimmering leaves. Strange, bulbous plants pulse with an inner light, casting dancing shadows across the forest floor. He reaches for his emergency beacon, only to find it crushed beyond repair. The realization hits him. He's stranded on an alien world with limited supplies and no way to call for help. Derek takes a deep breath, steeling himself for the challenges ahead. He's been trained for this, but the reality of his situation sends a chill down his spine. As Derek gathers what supplies he can salvage from the wreckage, he's unaware of the pair of eyes watching his every move. Gia, a young Milan female, crouches in the undergrowth, her heart racing. She's never seen a creature like this before. The human's pale skin and strange clothing are alien enough, but it's his teeth that truly terrify her. To Gia's eyes, those omnivorous teeth can only belong to a carnivorous predator. She's convinced the human has come to hunt her kind for food. Derek sets out into the jungle, his movements cautious but determined. He pushes through thick vegetation, careful not to touch the strange plants surrounding him. Some ooze a viscous liquid that sizzles when it drips to the ground, while others sport thorns as long as his fingers. Gia follows at a distance, both frightened and fascinated by the human's presence. She moves silently through the familiar terrain, her body low to the ground, careful not to alert the perceived predator to her presence. As Derek navigates the increasingly treacherous environment, he encounters the dangerous fauna native to Zarth. A creature resembling a cross between a spider and a snake lunges at him from a low-hanging branch. Derek's combat training kicks in, and he ducks, narrowly avoiding its venomous fangs. In one fluid motion, he grabs a fallen branch and swings it, connecting with the creature's head and sending it flying into the underbrush. Gia watches this display of strength and skill with a mixture of awe and terror. The human's abilities seem to confirm her fears about his predatory nature. The jungle grows more perilous with each step. Derek carefully picks his way across a field of what appear to be innocent flowers, only to jump back as one snaps shut, nearly taking his foot with it. He wipes sweat from his brow, the humid air making every movement a struggle. Suddenly, the ground trembles. A massive shape bursts from the undergrowth, a predator native to Zarth, all claws and teeth and rippling muscle. It towers over Derek, saliva dripping from its gaping maw. Derek doesn't hesitate. He grabs a jagged piece of metal from his crashed ship, wielding it like a makeshift sword. The beast lunges, and Derek rolls, slashing at its leg as he comes up. The creature roars in pain and fury, its tail whipping around and catching Derek in the chest, sending him flying. He slams into a tree, the impact knocking the wind from his lungs. But Derek pushes through the pain, scrambling to his feet as the predator charges again. He waits until the last second, then dives to the side, causing the beast to crash headfirst into the tree. As the creature staggers, dazed, Derek seizes his chance. He leaps onto its back, clinging to its scales as it bucks and roars. With a yell of effort, he drives his makeshift weapon deep into the base of the predator's skull. The beast lets out a final, earth-shaking roar before collapsing. In the chaos of the fight, a nearby tree comes crashing down. Gia, who had been watching the battle in stunned silence, finds herself pinned beneath the massive trunk. Despite her terror of the human, she can't help but cry out in pain and fear. Derek's head snaps towards the sound. Without hesitation, he rushes towards Gia's voice. As he pushes through the foliage and sees her trapped form, their eyes meet. In that moment, Gia realizes the truth. This strange creature isn't here to eat her. He's here to help. Derek's eyes locked with Gia's, and in that moment, understanding passed between them. He rushed forward, assessing the situation quickly. The fallen tree pinned Gia's lower body, but thankfully, the soft forest floor had partially cushioned the impact. "Hold still," Derek said, his voice calm despite the urgency of the situation. He placed his hands on the trunk, muscles straining as he lifted. The tree budged slightly, allowing Gia to wriggle free. As she scrambled away from the trunk, Derek let it drop with a heavy thud. He knelt beside her, hands hovering uncertainly as he looked for signs of injury. Gia's alien features were difficult to read, but her body language spoke of pain and fear. "Are you hurt?" Derek asked, gesturing to her legs. Gia's large eyes blinked rapidly as she processed his words. She didn't understand the language, but his tone and expression conveyed concern. Slowly, she moved her legs, wincing slightly but finding no serious damage. Derek let out a relieved sigh. "Okay, good. You're okay." As the adrenaline faded, the reality of their situation set in. Night was falling on Zarth, the bioluminescent flora growing brighter in the deepening darkness. Strange calls echoed through the jungle, reminding Derek of the dangers lurking in the alien wilderness. He looked at Gia, then gestured to himself. "Derek," he said, tapping his chest. He pointed to her, raising his eyebrows in question. "Gia," she responded hesitantly, mimicking his gesture. Derek smiled, revealing his teeth again. Gia flinched instinctively, but this time she noticed the warmth in his eyes. Perhaps those teeth weren't a sign of a predator after all. As Derek helped Gia to her feet, he realized he needed shelter for the night. The crashed ship was too damaged to offer protection, and the jungle was teeming with unknown threats. He mimed sleeping, then looked at Gia questioningly. Gia understood his dilemma. She hesitated, weighing her options. This strange creature had saved her life and seemed to mean no harm. Decision made, she gestured for Derek to follow her. They set off through the dense foliage, Gia leading the way with confidence born of familiarity. Derek followed closely, his senses on high alert. The jungle seemed to come alive at night, pulsing with an eerie energy that set his nerves on edge. Their path led them to a deep ravine, its bottom lost in shadow. Gia stopped, her expression conveying the difficulty of their situation. Derek surveyed the obstacle, his mind racing. He spotted thick vines hanging from nearby trees, and an idea formed. Working quickly, Derek fashioned a crude rope from the vines, testing its strength. Gia watched with growing admiration as he secured one end to a sturdy tree. Derek mimed his plan to Gia. He would carry her across while using the vine for support. Gia's eyes widened, but she nodded, placing her trust in this alien creature. Derek lifted her onto his back, her slim arms wrapping around his neck. With a deep breath, he gripped the vine and stepped off the edge. They swung across the ravine, the makeshift rope creaking under their combined weight. Gia clung tightly to Derek, her heart pounding. As they reached the other side, Derek's feet scrabbled for purchase on the slick ground. For a heart-stopping moment, they teetered on the edge. Then, with a final surge of strength, Derek pulled them to safety. Breathing heavily, they disentangled themselves. Gia looked at Derek with newfound respect, impressed by his strength and ingenuity. As they continued their journey, the dynamic between them shifted. No longer predator and prey, they were now allies in this hostile environment. As they walked, Gia noticed Derek eyeing some brightly colored berries growing on a nearby bush. She recognized the plant immediately. Its fruit was highly toxic to her people. Without thinking, she grabbed Derek's arm as he reached for the berries. Derek froze, surprised by the contact. Gia mimed eating the berries, then clutched her throat and stomach, mimicking illness. Understanding dawned on Derek's face, and he nodded gratefully. This exchange marked another step in their growing trust and cooperation. As they neared the Milan settlement, Gia's steps slowed. She turned to Derek, trying to convey her apprehension through gestures and expressions. Derek picked up on her unease, realizing that his appearance might cause alarm among her people. He nodded, indicating that he understood the need for caution. Together, they formulated a plan through a series of mimes and gestures. Gia would approach first, explaining the situation to her people before introducing Derek. As they reached the outskirts of the settlement, voices drifted towards them. Derek hung back, concealed by the dense foliage, while Gia stepped into the clearing. She called out, her voice trembling slightly with nerves. A group of male Malans emerged from the bioorganic structures, their postures alert and wary. At their head was a tall, imposing figure that Derek guessed was their leader. Gia spoke rapidly, gesturing towards the jungle where Derek waited. The leader, Commander Zax, listened intently, his skin shifting colors in what Derek realized must be a form of communication. The other Milans reacted with a mix of curiosity and alarm, their own skin flickering in response. Finally, Zax nodded and called out towards Derek's hiding place. Taking a deep breath, Derek stepped into view, his hands raised in a universal gesture of peace. The Malon guards raised their weapons, bioorganic constructs that pulsed with an inner light. Derek stood still, his heart racing but his expression calm. He knew that his next actions would shape these aliens' perception of humanity. Gia moved to his side, her presence a silent endorsement. Zax approached cautiously, his eyes scanning Derek from head to toe. He spoke, his words unintelligible to Derek, but his tone questioning. Derek responded with a gentle smile, hoping his peaceful intentions would transcend the language barrier. After a tense moment, Zax lowered his weapon and gestured for Derek to follow. As they entered the settlement, Derek marveled at the intricate bioorganic architecture. Buildings seemed to grow from the ground, their surfaces alive with pulsing light and shifting colors. Malon inhabitants gathered to stare at the strange human, their reactions ranging from fascination to fear. Children peeked out from behind their parents, their large eyes wide with wonder. Derek was led to a central structure, clearly important from its size and the deference shown by the other Malons. As they entered, he found himself facing a council of elder Malons, their wizened features etched with lines of experience. Gia stepped forward, acting as translator. The council's questions came rapid fire, their skin changing colors in complex patterns as they communicated among themselves. Derek answered as best he could, emphasizing humanity's desire for peaceful coexistence and cultural exchange. As the questioning continued, Derek noticed the subtle shifts in the council members' skin tones, realizing he was missing a significant part of the conversation. This highlighted the vast gulf between their species and the potential for misunderstanding. The debate among the council members grew heated, their skin flashing in agitated patterns. Some argued for Derek's immediate expulsion, while others, swayed by Gia's passionate defense, advocated for learning more about humans. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the settlement, cutting through the tense atmosphere. Panicked shouts erupted outside, followed by the sound of something massive crashing through the underbrush. Commander Zax rushed to the entrance, barking orders to his guards. Derek followed, stepping out into chaos. An enormous predator, larger than the one he had faced earlier, was rampaging through the settlement. Its thick hide deflected the Malon's weapons, which seemed to only enrage it further. Derek's combat instincts kicked in. He grabbed a fallen guard's weapon, feeling its strange organic texture beneath his fingers. Without hesitation, he charged towards the beast, Gia close behind him. As they joined the fray, Derek shouted to Gia, gesturing a plan of attack. She nodded, understanding dawning in her eyes. Together they moved in perfect synchronization, Derek distracting the creature while Gia targeted its vulnerable points. Their teamwork proved effective. Derek's strength and combat experience combined with Gia's knowledge of Zarth's fauna to turn the tide of the battle. With a final, well-placed shot from Derek, the predator let out a deafening roar and retreated into the jungle. As the dust settled, Derek and Gia found themselves the center of attention. The Malons stared in awe, their earlier fear replaced by grudging respect. Commander Zax approached, his posture now one of cautious acceptance rather than hostility. The council emerged from their chamber, their expressions unreadable to Derek, but as Gia translated their words, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. They were offering him temporary shelter and assistance in repairing his ship. More than that, they expressed interest in learning about humanity. Commander Zax, impressed by Derek's combat prowess, suggested that humans could be valuable allies in the Milan's ongoing struggle against Zarth's dangerous wildlife. As the adrenaline of battle faded, Derek became acutely aware of Gia's presence beside him. Their eyes met, and he saw his own mix of relief, excitement, and budding affection mirrored in her alien features. Despite the vast differences between them, they had forged a connection that transcended species. The Milan settlement buzzed with activity as the inhabitants prepared accommodations for their unexpected guest. Derek knew that challenges lay ahead, cultural misunderstandings, conservative factions opposed to his presence, the monumental task of repairing his ship with alien technology. But as he stood there, surrounded by curious Malons and with Gia by his side, he felt a surge of optimism. This was just the beginning of humanity's introduction to a larger galactic community, and Derek Wright, through a twist of fate, found himself at the forefront of this momentous encounter. This was just the beginning of humanity's introduction to a larger galactic community. And Derek Wright, through a twist of fate, found himself at the forefront of this momentous first contact. As the initial excitement settled, the Malon settlement began to adapt to Derek's presence. The humans' arrival had sparked intense debate among the Malons, and clear factions were emerging. Commander Zax, impressed by Derek's combat prowess during the Predator attack, saw potential in the human skills. "Derek," Zax called out, his skin rippling with hues of blue and green. "Join us for a perimeter security expedition. Your combat experience could prove valuable." Derek nodded, grateful for the opportunity to prove himself further. He glanced at Gia, who gave him an encouraging smile. As they prepared to leave, Elder Crix approached, his wizened face etched with concern. "Commander, I must protest," Crix said, his skin flickering with agitated reds and oranges. "Involving this alien in our security matters is premature and potentially dangerous." Zax's skin pulsed with assertive yellows. "Your concerns are noted, Elder, but I believe Derek's skills could benefit us all." As the expedition group moved into the dense jungle, Derek found himself working seamlessly with Gia. Her knowledge of the local flora complemented his survival instincts, creating an effective partnership that didn't go unnoticed by the Malone guards. They trekked through the alien landscape, Derek's senses on high alert. The jungle pulsed with life, bioluminescent plants casting an eerie glow in the dim light. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the trees. "New predator?" Gia whispered, her skin paling with fear. "Not one I recognize." The creature burst from the underbrush, its massive form a blur of teeth and claws. Derek's combat instincts kicked in. He shouted orders, coordinating the Malon guards into a defensive formation. The battle was intense and chaotic. Derek's quick thinking and Gia's knowledge of weak points in Zarthian fauna proved crucial. Together they managed to drive the beast back, saving several Malon lives in the process. As they caught their breath, Commander Zax approached Derek, his skin glowing with admiration. "Your skills are impressive, human. Perhaps there is much our peoples could learn from each other." Returning to the settlement, Derek and Gia found themselves drawn closer by their shared experience. They walked together through the bioluminescent gardens on the outskirts of the village, the glowing plants casting a soft light on their faces. "I've never met anyone like you, Derek," Gia said softly, her large eyes reflecting the garden's glow. Derek felt a surge of attraction, surprising in its intensity. He reached out, his fingers gently brushing against Gia's arm. The touch sent a shiver through both of them, a moment of connection that transcended their biological differences. Their intimate moment was abruptly interrupted by a commotion from the settlement. They rushed back to find the council chamber in uproar. Elder Crix stood at the center, his skin flashing with agitated patterns. "This human's influence grows too strong," Crix declared. "He disrupts our way of life. We must send him away as soon as his ship is repaired." The council erupted into debate, split between those who saw Derek's potential and those who feared change. The argument might have continued indefinitely if not for the sudden, piercing screech that cut through the air. Derek rushed outside, Gia close behind. The sky was dark with a massive swarm of flying creatures, their venomous stingers glinting in the bioluminescent light of the settlement. The Malon defenses were quickly becoming overwhelmed. "We need your help, Derek," Commander Zax said, his voice urgent. "Do you have any ideas?" Derek's mind raced, recalling the bioluminescent garden he and Gia had just left. "The glowing plants," he said. "If we can create a massive light display, we might be able to disorient the swarm." Zax nodded, quickly organizing teams to gather the plants and set up the display. Derek worked alongside the Malons, directing the placement of the plants for maximum effect. Gia acted as his translator, bridging the communication gap in this crucial moment. As the swarm descended, the Malons activated the light display. The garden's glow amplified 100-fold, bathing the settlement in pulsating, disorienting light. The flying creatures reeled, their coordinated attack disintegrating into chaos. The Malin guards pressed their advantage, driving the confused swarm back into the jungle. As the last of the creatures disappeared, a cheer went up from the settlement. Derek found himself at the center of grateful Malins, their skin flickering with patterns of relief and gratitude. He caught Gia's eye across the crowd, seeing his own mix of exhilaration and exhaustion mirrored in her alien features. They had faced incredible challenges together, forging a bond that defied the vast differences between their species. As the celebration died down, Derek noticed Elder Crix watching from the shadows, his expression unreadable. The humans' decisive role in saving the settlement had undoubtedly shifted the political landscape, but the consequences of that shift remained to be seen. For now, Derek allowed himself to bask in the moment of victory, knowing that greater challenges and opportunities lay ahead. The path to true understanding between humans and Malans would be long and fraught with obstacles, but he was ready to face them, with Gia by his side. He felt a renewed sense of purpose. The bonds forged in the face of danger had transformed his unexpected arrival on Zarth into something far more profound. As the days passed, Derek's integration into Malin society deepened. His role in repelling the venomous swarm had elevated his status from curiosity to respected ally. The Malins, once wary of his alien presence, now sought his advice on security matters and combat techniques. Derek found himself spending more time with Gia, their shared experiences creating a connection that transcended their biological differences. They would often walk through the bioluminescent gardens, discussing the intricacies of their respective cultures. However, not everyone welcomed Derek's growing influence. Elder Crix, his skin constantly flickering with shades of suspicion, watched the humans' interactions with narrowed eyes. One evening, as the council gathered to discuss recent events, Crix stepped forward, his posture rigid with grit. "Esteemed council," Crix began, his voice carrying across the chamber. "While the human has proven useful in times of crisis, we cannot ignore the potential threat he poses to our way of life. I propose a test, a trial, to truly measure his worth and commitment to our people." The council members leaned forward, their skin patterns shifting with interest. Crix continued, "The trial of Zarth. Let him face the challenges of our world and prove himself worthy of our trust." A murmur rippled through the chamber. The trial of Zarth was an ancient and dangerous ritual, one that had claimed the lives of many Malans over the generations. Derek, listening to Gia's translation, felt a mix of anticipation and apprehension. Commander Zax turned to Derek, his skin pulsing with curiosity. "The choice is yours, human. Do you accept this challenge?" Derek met Zax's gaze steadily. "I do. I'm ready to prove myself to your people." Gia's skin flashed with concern. She stepped forward, addressing the council. "I request permission to accompany Derek as his guide. My knowledge of Zarth's terrain and wildlife could prove crucial to his survival." After a brief deliberation, the council agreed. Commander Zax was appointed to lead a small team to observe the trial. As preparations began, Derek felt the weight of the challenge ahead. The morning of the trial dawned, casting an ethereal glow over the Malan settlement. Derek stood at the edge of the village, checking his gear one last time. Gia approached, her skin shimmering with a mix of worry and commitment. "The trial of Zarth is not to be taken lightly," she said softly. "Are you sure about this, Derek?" He nodded, giving her a reassuring smile. "It's the best way to gain the trust of your people. Besides, with you by my side, how can I fail?" As they set out into the wilds of Zarth, Derek marveled at the alien landscape. Towering, fungi-like structures dotted the horizon, their caps glowing with bioluminescent patterns. The air was thick with the calls of unseen creatures and the sweet, cloying scent of exotic flora. The first challenge came in the form of a vast field of carnivorous plants. Their vibrant petals belied the deadly digestive acids within. Derek watched in fascination as Gia demonstrated how to navigate the field, her movements graceful and precise. "The key is to step on the mature roots," she explained. "They're tough enough to support our weight without triggering the plant's feeding response." Derek followed her lead, his combat training allowing him to mimic her movements with surprising accuracy. As they reached the other side, he caught Commander Zax nodding approvingly. The next obstacle was a maze of toxic geysers, their noxious fumes creating a deadly labyrinth. Derek's quick thinking came into play as he used debris to test the wind currents, identifying safe passages through the poisonous mists. As they progressed deeper into Zarth's wilderness, Derek began to feel the strain of the alien environment. His breathing became labored and his movements slowed. Gia noticed his distress, her skin flickering with concern. "Derek, your body is struggling to adapt," she said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Let me show you a Malone breathing technique. It might help." She guided him through a series of controlled breaths, demonstrating how to regulate his intake of Zarth's atmosphere. As Derek followed her instructions, he felt his discomfort ease. Their faces were close, and for a moment, the rest of the world seemed to fade away. The moment was shattered by a bone-chilling roar. A pack of predatory beasts emerged from the underbrush, their eyes fixed on the group with hungry intent. Derek and Gia sprang into action, their movements synchronized as if they had fought side by side for years. Derek's combat expertise melded seamlessly with Gia's knowledge of Zarthian fauna. Together they led the creatures into a natural sinkhole, trapping them without bloodshed. Commander Zax's skin pulsed with impressed hues as he observed their teamwork. As the trial neared its final stage, the group approached the imposing silhouette of the Peak of Ancestors. The sacred Milan site loomed before them, its jagged slopes disappearing into the clouds above. Derek took a deep breath, steeling himself for the climb ahead. He felt Gia's hand slip into his, a gesture of support that transcended their biological differences. As they began their ascent, Derek knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he wouldn't face them alone. The Peak of Ancestors awaited, its storm-shrouded summit holding the key to Derek's acceptance among the Malones. With each step, he moved closer to proving his worth, and to confronting the true depth of his feelings for Gia and her world. As they reached the summit of the Peak of Ancestors, Derek and Gia stood in awe of the panoramic view of Zarth's alien landscape. Their moment of triumph was short-lived, however, as a Malon scout approached with urgent news. "A human ship approaches," the scout reported, his skin flashing with excitement and concern. "It will arrive within days." Derek's heart raced at the news. His long-awaited rescue was finally at hand, yet he felt an unexpected pang of reluctance. He looked at Gia, her large eyes reflecting a mix of emotions he couldn't quite decipher. As they descended from the peak, word of the approaching ship spread through the Malone settlement like wildfire. The once quiet village buzzed with activity and speculation. Derek found himself at the center of attention once again, bombarded with questions about human intentions and capabilities. Commander Zax called an emergency council meeting to address the situation. Derek and Gia arrived to find the chamber already filled with agitated Malans, their skin flickering with a cacophony of colors. Elder Crix stood before the assembly, his voice carrying over the murmurs. "We must consider the implications of more humans arriving on Zarth," he declared. "Their presence poses a significant threat to our way of life." Derek felt a surge of frustration at Crix's words, but before he could respond, Commander Zax stepped forward. "Let us not forget the benefits we've reaped from Derek's presence," Zax countered. "His knowledge and skills have already saved countless Milan lives. Perhaps this is an opportunity for mutually beneficial cooperation." The council erupted into heated debate. Derek listened intently as Gia translated, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He knew his actions in the coming days would shape the future of human-Milan relations. As the meeting adjourned without a clear resolution, Derek was approached by a young Malone with vibrant, swirling patterns on her skin. She introduced herself as Lyra, a scientist specializing in xenobiology. "I've been fascinated by your physiology since you arrived," Lyra explained, her eyes gleaming with curiosity. "With your permission, I'd like to conduct a series of examinations. Understanding how your body responds to Zarth's environment could be crucial for future human-Malon interactions." Derek agreed, seeing the potential benefits of such research. Over the next few days, he underwent a battery of tests in Lyra's lab. The experience was often uncomfortable, but Derek endured it stoically, knowing the importance of the work. On the third day of examinations, Lyra's expression grew serious as she reviewed the results. "Derek, I've discovered something concerning," she said, her skin pulsing with worry. "Your prolonged exposure to Zarth's atmosphere is causing unforeseen changes in your body." Derek listened intently as Lyra explained that his system was slowly adapting to the alien environment, but the process was putting significant stress on his organs. She developed a treatment to alleviate the symptoms, but the implications were clear. Eventually, Derek would need to choose between returning to Earth or permanently altering his physiology to survive on Zarth. As Derek grappled with this revelation, Gia threw herself into preparations for the human ship's arrival. She organized teams to construct temporary shelters and gather supplies, her natural leadership abilities shining through. Derek watched her work with admiration, realizing how deeply he had come to care for her. With the estimated arrival of the rescue ship drawing near, Derek and Gia finally found a moment alone. They walked together through the bioluminescent gardens, the glowing plants casting a soft, intimate light. "I never expected to feel this way about an alien," Derek admitted, reaching out to touch Gia's cheek. Gia's skin rippled with emotion. "Nor I," she whispered. "You've changed everything, Derek." Their lips met in a passionate kiss, their bodies pressing together despite their physiological differences. To their surprise and delight, they discovered unexpected compatibilities, their union transcending the boundaries of their species. Their intimate moment was abruptly interrupted by a blaring alarm. They rushed to the command center, where Commander Zax was coordinating a response to a massive threat. A swarm of predatory creatures, driven by environmental changes, was heading directly towards the settlement. "The human ship's landing trajectory will take it right into the path of the swarm," Zax explained, his skin flashing with urgent patterns. Derek's mind raced, formulating a plan. "We need to warn the ship and protect the settlement," he said. "What if we could create a massive signal beacon using your bioorganic technology? It could divert the ship and repel the creatures." Zax considered the idea, his skin pulsing with rapid calculations. "It's possible, but extremely risky. We'd need to deploy the beacon from the upper atmosphere in one of the most unstable regions of Zarth." "I'll do it," Derek volunteered without hesitation. "Not alone," Gia interjected. "You'll need my knowledge of Zarth's weather patterns to navigate those skies." As they prepared for the mission, Derek felt the physical toll of Zarth's atmosphere more acutely than ever. Lyra's treatment had helped, but he knew he was pushing his body to its limits. Yet with the lives of both humans and Milans at stake, he had no choice but to press on. Derek and Gia boarded a Malon aircraft, its organic hull pulsing with life. As they took off, Derek saw the settlement mobilizing for defense below. Even Elder Crix had set aside his reservations, working alongside the others to fortify their home. The aircraft ascended into Zarth's turbulent upper atmosphere, buffeted by violent winds and electrical discharges. Derek gripped the controls tightly, relying on Gia's guidance to navigate the treacherous conditions. They carried with them not just the beacon, but the hopes of two species on the brink of a historic encounter. As they flew higher, the fate of both the human rescue mission and the Milan settlement hung in the balance. Derek felt the pressure in his chest increasing, a stark reminder of the personal stakes involved. Yet with Gia by his side and the challenges ahead, he had never felt more alive or more committed to bridging the gap between their two worlds. As they soared into the turbulent skies of Zarth's upper atmosphere, Derek gripped the controls of the Malon aircraft tightly. The organic hull pulsed beneath his fingers, responding to his every command with uncanny precision. Gia's voice cut through the howling winds. "Bank left, Derek. There's a massive electrical discharge ahead." He complied instantly, the craft lurching as it narrowly avoided a blinding bolt of energy. The turbulence intensified, tossing them about like leaves in a hurricane. Derek's chest tightened, each breath becoming more labored as the alien atmosphere took its toll. "Derek, your vitals are fluctuating dangerously," Gia said, her skin flashing with concern. "We need to stabilize you or you won't make it to the deployment zone." He nodded grimly, fighting to keep the craft level as Gia moved closer. Her hands, cool and slightly damp, pressed against his temples. Derek felt a strange tingling sensation spreading through his body as Gia began an emergency Malin physiological procedure. "Breathe with me," she instructed, her voice soothing despite the chaos around them. Derek matched his breathing to hers, feeling a gradual easing of the pressure in his chest. As Gia worked, Derek caught glimpses of the Malone settlement far below. The normally tranquil village was a hive of activity, with figures scurrying about like ants preparing for a storm. Commander Zax's voice crackled over the communication system. "Defensive positions are nearly complete. Elder Crix has provided invaluable insights on ancient deterrent techniques. How close are you to beacon deployment?" "We're approaching the designated altitude now," Derek responded, his voice stronger thanks to Gia's intervention. "Stand by for activation." As they reached the deployment zone, a massive bolt of lightning struck the aircraft. The organic systems went haywire, displays flickering erratically before going dark. Derek's stomach lurched as they began to plummet. "Gia, brace yourself," he shouted, muscle memory from years of pilot training kicking in. His hands flew over the controls, desperately trying to restart the engines. The ground rushed up to meet them, the vibrant colors of Zarth's landscape blurring into a dizzying swirl. With seconds to spare, the engines sputtered back to life. Derek pulled up hard, the craft groaning under the strain as it leveled out mere meters above the treetops. "The beacon?" Gia gasped, her skin pale. "It's damaged." Derek's mind raced, assessing their options. "We'll use the ship itself," he said, a plan forming. "If we fly into the swarm and broadcast the repelling signal, we can still complete the mission." Gia's eyes widened as she realized the implications. "That's suicide, Derek. You can't—" "I have to," he cut her off. "It's the only way to save your people and warn my ship. I'm ejecting you now." As Derek reached for the ejection controls, Gia grabbed his face, pulling him into a deep, passionate kiss. The world around them seemed to fade away as Derek felt a strange energy flowing between them. Images and sensations flooded his mind, memories that weren't his own, emotions too complex for words. The psychic imprint of the Milan bonding ritual left Derek momentarily stunned. In that split second of distraction, Gia made her move. She slammed her hand down on the ejection controls, launching Derek from the craft. "Gia, no!" Derek screamed as he was propelled into the air. He watched in horror as Gia took control of the aircraft, steering it towards the oncoming swarm. As Derek's parachute deployed, he saw the massive cloud of predators on the horizon. The Malon craft, piloted by Gia, flew directly into their midst. A blinding pulse of energy erupted from the ship, sending shockwaves through the air. The swarm scattered, its cohesion broken by the bioorganic beacon signal. In the distance, Derek caught a glimpse of a larger ship altering its course, the HSS Horizon, responding to the unexpected energy surge. Derek landed hard on the outskirts of the Milan settlement, his body aching from the impact and the lingering effects of Zarth's atmosphere. He struggled to his feet, eyes searching the sky for any sign of Gia or her craft. Commander Zax approached, his skin pulsing with a mix of relief and concern. "Derek, what happened? Where's Gia?" Before Derek could respond, Elder Crix's voice rang out. "Look, the swarm! It's dispersing!" The Malons watched in awe as the predators retreated, their threat neutralized by Gia's sacrifice. Elder Crix, his previous skepticism replaced by grudging respect, declared, "Gia has saved us all. She is a true hero of the Malon people." As the immediate danger passed, Derek's attention turned to the approaching human ship. The HSS Horizon descended through Zarth's atmosphere, its sleek form a stark contrast to the organic shapes of the Malone settlement. Commander Zax stepped forward, his posture resolute. "I will establish contact with your people, Derek. We must work together now, to find Gia and to forge a new future between our species." Derek nodded, his heart heavy with the weight of Gia's sacrifice and the lingering connection of their bonding ritual. As the humans and Malons prepared for their historic first contact, Derek's gaze returned to the horizon, where Gia had disappeared. "I'll find you," he whispered, the psychic imprint of their bond tugging at his consciousness. "Whatever it takes, I'll bring you home." Home. The words were barely a whisper, but they carried the weight of a promise. Derek's dedication crystallized as he watched the HSS Horizon touch down on Zarth's surface. The ship's sleek hull gleamed in the alien sunlight, a stark reminder of the two worlds now colliding. As the hatch opened and the first human crew members stepped onto Zarth's soil, Derek felt a surge of commitment. He turned to Commander Zax, his eyes blazing with purpose. "We need to organize a search party immediately. Gia's out there, and I'm not giving up until we find her." Zax's skin rippled with agreement. "I concur. We'll assemble a team of our best trackers and combine their skills with your human technology." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Derek worked tirelessly alongside Captain Chen of the HSS Horizon to coordinate the joint human-Milan expedition. They gathered supplies, pored over maps of Zarth's terrain, and integrated the ship's advanced tracking systems with Malin bioorganic sensors. As dawn broke, Derek stood at the edge of the settlement, gazing out at the vast, alien wilderness before him. The search party assembled behind him, a mix of humans in high-tech gear and Malins with their natural adaptations to Zarth's environment. Lyra approached, her expression a mix of concern and dedication. "Derek, I've prepared a new treatment to help your body cope with prolonged exposure to our atmosphere. It should buy you more time, but be careful out there." Derek nodded gratefully as she administered the treatment. Almost immediately he felt a change. His breathing eased, and his senses seemed to sharpen. "Thank you, Lyra. This could make all the difference." With a final nod to Commander Zax and Captain Chen, Derek led the search party into the unknown. They trekked through dense jungles where bioluminescent plants pulsed with eerie light, and across vast plains of swaying, alien grass. Derek's newly enhanced senses proved invaluable, allowing him to detect subtle changes in the environment that even the Milans missed. Days passed, each one bringing new challenges. They navigated treacherous swamps filled with caustic liquid, relying on Malin knowledge to find safe passages. Derek's body continued to adapt, granting him increased stamina and resilience. He pushed himself to the limit, driven by the faint psychic echo of Gia's presence in his mind. On the fifth day, they reached a vast canyon. The search party spread out along its edge, scanning for any sign of Gia or her craft. Derek's heart sank as he saw the first pieces of wreckage scattered across the rocky terrain below. "We've found debris consistent with Milan aircraft design," one of the human technicians reported, his voice grim. Derek's mind focused. "We need to get down there. Now." They carefully descended into the canyon, picking their way through the twisted metal and organic components. Initial scans showed no signs of life, but Derek refused to give up hope. He closed his eyes, focusing on the lingering connection from his bond with Gia. "There," he said suddenly, pointing to a narrow crevice. "I can feel something. We need to search that area thoroughly." The team combed the area, using every tool and sense at their disposal. It was a young Malon tracker who made the crucial discovery, a faint trail of bioluminescent markers leading away from the crash site. "These are emergency beacons," the Malon explained, his skin pulsing with excitement. "They're designed to activate on impact and leave a trail for rescuers to follow." Hope surged through the group as they followed the glowing trail. It led them through winding caverns and across treacherous rock formations. The markers grew fainter as they progressed, indicating they were created days ago. As they emerged from a narrow pass, Derek held up his hand, signaling the group to stop. Ahead, barely visible in the dim light, was a crude barrier of woven vines and rocks. "We're not alone," he whispered. Suddenly, figures emerged from hidden positions around them. They were Malins, but unlike any Derek had seen before. Their skin patterns were wild and unfamiliar, and they brandished primitive weapons with clear hostility. Derek stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. He spoke in the basic Malon language he had learned, his words slow and careful. "We come in peace. We're searching for a friend, a Malon female who may have crashed near here." The wild Malins, as Derek would later learn to call them, regarded him with a mix of suspicion and fascination. His appearance, neither fully human nor Malin, seemed to confuse and intrigue them. After a tense moment, one of them stepped forward, lowering his weapon slightly. "You speak our tongue, strange one," the wild Malone said. "Yet you are not of our kind. What manner of creature are you?" Derek explained their mission as best he could, describing Gia and the crash. As he spoke, he noticed the wild Malones exchanging glances, their skin patterns shifting in what he recognized as silent communication. Finally, the leader nodded. "We know of whom you speak. Come, we will take you to her." Relief washed over Derek as they followed the wild Malons to their hidden settlement. As they entered a small clearing, he saw her, Gia, alive but clearly injured, resting on a bed of soft leaves. Their eyes met, and the psychic bond between them flared to life. Derek rushed to her side, taking her hand in his. The intensity of their connection sent ripples of light cascading across Gia's skin, a display that left the wild Malons murmuring in awe. "Derek," Gia whispered, her voice weak but filled with joy. "You found me." As the search party's medics tended to Gia's injuries, Derek learned of her harrowing ordeal, her desperate flight through the swarm, the crash landing, and her struggle to survive in the wilderness before the wild Malones found her. The wild Malon leader approached, his demeanor now respectful. "We have witnessed the bond between you. It is unlike anything we have seen. Perhaps there is much our peoples can learn from each other." Derek nodded, realizing that this moment could be the beginning of something far greater than a simple rescue mission. As Gia's strength returned and the wild Malons began to open up to the search party, he saw the potential for a new era of cooperation, not just between humans and Malons, but among all the diverse peoples of Zarth. With Gia safe and new alliances forming, Derek's thoughts turned to the future. The challenges ahead were just beginning. As the search party prepared to transport Gia back to the settlement, Derek couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the start of a much greater journey. The return trip was arduous but filled with a newfound sense of purpose. Derek walked alongside Gia's stretcher, their hands rarely parting as they traversed the challenging terrain. The wild Malons accompanied them, their curiosity about the outside world growing with each step. Upon reaching the settlement, they were greeted by a crowd of anxious faces. Commander Zax and Captain Chen rushed forward, their relief palpable. "We've been monitoring your progress," Chen said, her eyes darting between Derek and Gia. "It's good to have you both back safely." As Gia was whisked away for medical treatment, Derek found himself pulled into a flurry of debriefings and strategy sessions. The discovery of the wild Malon tribe had opened up new possibilities for cooperation and understanding. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The HSS Horizon became a permanent fixture in Zarth's sky, a gleaming symbol of the growing partnership between humans and Malons. Derek threw himself into his work, bridging the gap between the two species with a purpose born from his unique experiences. Gia recovered swiftly, her resilience impressing even the most skeptical human doctors. As soon as she was able, she joined Derek in his efforts to integrate the wild Malon tribe into the main settlement. Their bond, forged in crisis and strengthened by shared purpose, deepened with each passing day. 1 year after the fateful day of the swarm attack, Derek stood at the edge of the settlement, marveling at the changes. The once distinct areas of human and Malon habitation had blurred, with organic structures now intertwining with sleek human architecture. In the central plaza, a group of wild Malons demonstrated their hunting techniques to an eager audience of human scientists and settled Malons. "It's incredible, isn't it?" Gia's voice came from behind him, her hand slipping into his. "I never imagined we could come so far in such a short time." Derek turned to her, drinking in the sight of her vibrant skin patterns. "We've only just begun," he said, his voice filled with excitement. "There's so much more to explore, to discover." As if in answer to his words, a young Malon researcher approached them, his skin pulsing with impossibly strong enthusiasm. "Derek, Gia, you need to see this immediately." They followed him to a newly constructed laboratory where holographic displays showed a series of ancient ruins. "We've discovered something extraordinary in the southern hemisphere," the researcher explained, manipulating the images. "It appears to be the remains of an early Malon space program." Derek and Gia exchanged a look of wonder. The implications were staggering. As they pored over the data, ideas began to form. The combination of this lost Malon technology with current human space capabilities could open up entirely new frontiers. Over the next few weeks, Derek and Gia worked tirelessly to develop a proposal. They envisioned a joint mission to explore Zarth's moons, utilizing a hybrid spacecraft that would combine the best of both species' technologies. The day they presented their plan to the Malon Council and human leadership was tense. Elder Crix, once their staunchest opponent, now sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. Derek took a deep breath and began. Esteemed leaders, we stand at a crossroads. Before us lies an opportunity, not just for scientific advancement, but for a true melding of our peoples and our dreams. As he spoke, Gia manipulated a holographic display showing the proposed spacecraft design and mission parameters. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, Elder Crix stood. A year ago, I would have dismissed this as folly, he said, his skin rippling with complex emotions. But now I see the wisdom in it. You have my support. The project, dubbed Horizon Zarth, was approved with resounding enthusiasm. The next months were a whirlwind of activity as construction began on the revolutionary spacecraft. Derek and Gia found themselves at the center of it all, coordinating teams of human engineers and Malon bioorganic specialists. As the launch date approached, their personal relationship deepened alongside their professional collaboration. One evening, as they watched Zarth's twin moons rise over the settlement, Derek turned to Gia. I think it's time we made this official, he said, his voice soft. Not just for us, but as a symbol of what we're trying to achieve here. Gia's skin lit up with joy. A union of our peoples, in every sense, she agreed. Their ceremony, held beneath the nearly completed spacecraft, was a blend of human and Malon traditions. Elder Crix presided, his words bridging the gap between the two cultures. As Derek and Gia exchanged vows, their unique physiologies intertwined in a display of light and color that left the audience breathless. The day of the launch dawned clear and bright. Derek and Gia stood side by side in their flight suits, a perfect balance of human and Malon design. The crew around them was a mix of both species, each chosen for their skills and their commitment to the joint mission. Commander Zax approached them, his skin pulsing with pride. You've done more than we ever thought possible, he said. This mission is just the beginning of a new era for both our peoples. As they boarded the ship, Derek caught Gia's eye. No words were needed. Their bond conveyed everything. They took their positions at the control panel, hands intertwined as the countdown began. The engines roared to life, a perfect fusion of human technology and Malon bioorganic systems. As the ship lifted off, Derek felt a surge of emotion. He thought back to his first days on Zarth, lost and alone in an alien jungle. Now he was part of something greater than he could have ever imagined. The spacecraft broke through Zarth's atmosphere, the blue-green planet receding below them. On the observation deck, humans and Malons alike pressed against the windows, their differences forgotten in the face of the awe-inspiring view. Derek and Gia shared a private smile as they set course for Zarth's largest moon. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, not just as a couple, but as representatives of a new, united future for both their species. As the ship accelerated towards its destination, the crew settled in for the journey. In the quiet of the cockpit, Derek and Gia's hands remained linked on the control panel, a small but powerful symbol of the bridges they had built and the future they were forging. The vastness of space stretched out before them, filled with endless possibilities. And as Zarth's moons grew larger in their view screen, Derek and Gia knew that this was only the beginning of their greatest adventure yet.
If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, I liked the story, and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.